All right, good morning, everybody. The sun right behind me, so the lighting is absolutely horrible. But the message is what counts, not the lighting. I mean, I make videos totally in the dark, so let's go on. This week's Parsha, you know, there was a troupe that was a comedy troupe in the 70s. They were kind of the poor man's American Monty Python. I believe they were called the Fireside Theater, kind of taken from FDR's Fireside Chats. There's a little bit better lighting now. And the Fireside Theater, they would put out records, and there was one record I remember kind of falling asleep watching on YouTube a film that they played alongside the record that was in sync with the record, and I believe they released somehow. I don't think, it was before there was VHS. I think, they or I think VHS was just in its infant state at the time, but I believe they would pretty much sell the film to listen. You'd watch it on a projector and listen to the record at the same time you were watching the film. You had to have it synced up. I think that's how it was sold. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. That's not the point here. Not a big fan of theirs. I just remember one joke that they told, in that it's not that I'm against them. It's just I don't spend a lot of time watching them. I never did. Heard about them only really once on NPR or something when I was flipping through the radio stations. And I came across this somehow on YouTube, and I guess it was venishma was useful. I should mention this joke, and I could use it to demonstrate something here. And I wasted 2 minutes setting this up. So they had some kind of a skit about Ben Franklin, and they said Benjamin Franklin, the most famous president of the United States, who was never president of the United States. And in a certain way, I kind of want to connect that to this week's Parsha. There's a verse, there's a pasuk in this week's Torah reading, this week's liturgical Torah reading in the synagogue, that says, Naaseh venishma, and everybody thinks that that's in Parshas Yisro. That would be in last week's Parsha. Everybody always preaches on Naaseh venishma. People know it's not in Parshas Yisro, obviously, and it's in Parshas Mishpatim. But all the rabbis like to preach about Naaseh venishma in Parshas Yisro, even though it's in Parshas Mishpatim. So it's along the lines of, I guess, in the way I think with my, spectrum disorder somewhat. That I mean that seriously. I think I might be, high functioning on the spectrum disorder, something. And more that I'm studying about this, I think I'm realizing this, but as much as South Park is going to want to say it's just an excuse, I don't know. And I see it in my children, I see it in other family members of mine. So it's what it is, Maybe we all are a little bit. Anyway, just the way my mind works, I kind of associate that, that this idea that people believe that, or that rabbis tend to preach Naaseh venishma and Parshas Yisro, which is last week's Parsha, with, in a certain way, with this, Ben Franklin was the most famous president of the United States who was never president of the United States. Not exactly the same, but it's just a little mnemonic there. Naaseh venishma, I saw this morning, while reading my emails, while getting ready to daven in the morning. I don't have to explain what I mean getting ready to daven is. Getting ready to pray. Other than that, davening means praying. I'm reading my emails, and if in the place where you get ready to daven, you can't learn Torah. And I think maybe by this point you'll understand what I'm saying. If you didn't get it the first time, it's amazing. Those apples are still on the tree in February. Remember Leo Gorsy's daughter was talking about interviewing Huntz Hall and asking her about her father, asking him about her father and his memories about her father. And she talked about how Huntz Hall also did that. He would just, say, "Oh, don't think I'm wearing a hat because I'm bald." He took his hat off and showed that he had a full head of hair. I just like wearing a hat, like he did in all his movies. Huntz Hall, the Bowery Boys. Anyway, so I guess I have that same thing. I get distracted easily. I say, "Man noa ilan zeh, man noa inir zeh, mischayef nafshay." If you know the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which we just my Mishnah learning, I just learned Pirkei Avos the last 2 days. So anyway, because I go straight through the Mishnah, finish Shas Mishnayos about twice a year. I mean, by the grace of God, I'm not taking credit for it. I'm just saying it's something you can do too. I probably should, especially with these apps and everything. Anyway, back to what I'm saying. So I saw just the headline and the byline of an article, but I wasn't going to read it, from the former Chief Rabbi of England, the Chief Rabbi Emeritus, Lord Jonathan Sacks. And I knew already what he was going to say. Obviously, he was going to say it very beautifully, much better than I can. He's a very talented writer and speaker. Even if I might disagree with some of his politics, I still have respect for him. Rabbi Sacks, Chief Rabbi Emeritus Sacks, not to be confused with Rabbi Yonason Sacks, who's now the Rosh Yeshiva of my alma mater. Two different people. One from Passaic, New Jersey, and one from the other side of the pond. The headline just simply said about experiential Judaism and connecting it to Naaseh venishma. We will do and we will understand, because the word nishma, like when we say Shema Yisrael, hear O Israel, hear doesn't just mean listen with your ears, like you hear a noise. Shema means you understand. You listen and you understand. But it says Naaseh venishma, we will do and we will listen, or we will do and we will understand, in a certain sense of that's what it means there by listening. And that's pretty much the message. I don't really have to elaborate it much. Oh, this thing that holds my phone up is breaking. We're still on, right? We're still recording, even if it's like on the side or something. I don't know what's going on now. Now we're like sideways. Anywho, this is the point. You could read Diane Grunfeld's book on the Sabbath. You could even read A.J. Heschel's book on the Sabbath, and you're not going to know what Shabbos is all about. But you could go to a Shabbaton, and you're going to want to keep Shabbos after that. You keep one Shabbos. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael es Shabbos lasos es Shabbos. Things that you're not going to understand by reading books. You can only understand by doing them. I don't know what the lulav is all about, but I know I love doing that mitzvah of shaking a lulav on Sukkos. I don't know what all, I understand all the midrashim about it. I don't know if I understand so much, but I can say them over. The Kabbalistic intentions, which I think is a very Kabbalistic, why do we make Na'nuim and this and that, and I know that the Kabbalists have kavanot that are attached to that and this and that, and I don't know any of that stuff, but I know that the Berditchever, I don't feel the same way the Berditchever does, but I hope I can have a tiny morsel of that. How he was so excited to shake lulav that he broke that he broke the glass to go get the esrog out of where, because he didn't realize it was behind a glass window, That says something about who the Berditchever was, and also says something about what the lulav and esrog are, and how he asked the angel of death, after Yom Kippur, just let me survive through Sukkot, so I can do lulav and esrog one more time, and then you can take me home, and what that means. One of our friends here was asking about veneration of saints in Judaism. That's certainly part of Hasidism. We'll talk about that maybe another time. But we've already been rambling on for 10 minutes. But as much as we can talk and as much as we can read, you're really only going to understand it after you do it. And that's why, everyone is like, they're amazed by this Naaseh venishma. I will do and I'll listen. How are you going to do something before you know what to do? Meaning it's just, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. And this is, and what does the Midrash say? This is the secret that the angels use. That's connected also to Parshas Mishpatim, because they receive the crowns. These crowns of glory that they received. The Shtreimel represents that according to Reb Tzadok. That they received, when they said Naaseh venishma, they received 2 crowns. They were taken away. But with Parshas Shkolim, we get them back on Shabbos. It's connected to that whole world. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. What I really want to bring out here, the practical idea that I want to bring out, and it's probably true with other religions too, I don't know. It's not my business. Whatever tradition you come from, I'm not necessarily telling you have to follow my tradition. But there are things that you're never going to get just from reading a book. There are things that you're never going to get just from listening to a lecture. You have to do these things first. Then you can go back and read the book again, hear the lecture again, and then now I get it. I mean, it's not only in religion. It's in everything in life, You're going to read a book about falling in love. You're going to read a book about marriage. You're going to read a book about anything. Or even watch a movie about it, or whatever it is. You're not going to really get it until you actually do it. And then after you've done it, all those books make sense now. Kind of like in Christianity, in John's gospel, he starts off, the word has become flesh. And he's talking about an experience as well. It's not only talking about the logos and this and that and all the theological aspects. And I know Rabbi Bar Tzadok always says that this about the word becoming flesh, the mistake of the Christian is to say that this applies only to, and not all Christians, I think, really believe it's exclusive to Jesus. But the other day I was watching a lecture by Shaul Magid, and because I'm preparing for my lectures, so I'm listening to other lectures, right? And he was talking about Jesus and how Buber viewed Jesus and compared Jesus and Spinoza and Shabtai Tzvi and Lahavdil, the Holy Baal Shem Tov. They should never be put in the same category. It offends my sensibilities as a chassid to put them in the same categories. But I understand I'm talking about people outside of my community. But I just have to say this because it's, but I also want to hear what other people have to say and be open to. Shaul Magid is not Fininzitter, but I want to hear. I want to understand what's going on here. I really was trying to figure out who Buber was, because I didn't know anything about Buber, and now I have to lecture about Buber. I didn't realize. I thought Buber lived like a long time ago. I didn't realize he died in the 1960s. Like, that's how ignorant I knew. He wrote the Hasidic tales. And I thought that was like from the 1800s or something. I was totally ignorant of who Buber was, anything, and I'm still pretty ignorant. Anyway, I was, this Shalom Magid kept mentioning Jesus in the lecture, and my son, my 6-year-old, says, nobody cares about Jesus. I said, well, a lot of people care about him. We don't, but a lot of people do. So anyway, and I don't mean that to be disrespectful to my Christian friends, but I don't know where he picked that up from. But I don't know. Anyway, I didn't even say that. I don't know what I said to him. I was trying to listen to the lecture, but he was upset that I wasn't watching something on YouTube about Super Mario Brothers or Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't know. Instead, I was watching something about Martin Buber. But there, in a homiletical sense, if not in the intended sense, and like I said, Rabbi Bart Sadok said, like in the intended sense of what John was saying there, was not necessarily exclusive, meaning this idea is that, we discussed this before, how a Talmud Chochem wird a lebendige Sefer Torah, what our sages teach of how foolish the Babylonians are, that they stand up for a Torah scroll and they don't stand up for a great man. Meaning to say that a scholar, a pious scholar, is a living Torah scroll. And whatever respect we show to a piece of parchment, with all due respect, that it deserves respect, that piece of parchment, we should show even more respect to a great person. And by a great person, we mean a pious scholar. So, and like we talked about Vikoravoi, right? We can, that the king is supposed to be someone that you read the Torah in him, not in the Torah scroll. The Torah is feminine, so the Torah would be her. There's no it in Hebrew; it's just he or she. There's no gender neutral in Hebrew. It doesn't exist. Every word is gendered, like it is in most languages. Then they try to make up new things. Latinx doesn't have any. That's ridiculous. It's not Spanish anymore. You're creating a new language, and I don't know what the Tzionim are going to do with their Hebrew. It's not going to be Hebrew anymore. That's all I can say. When they introduce a gender neutral Hebrew. But anyway, the point is, and it's not a male-female issue. It's just the point is that the translation, just to say that the king should read the Torah every day. It's you could argue that the word sefer is masculine, and so the modifier of the Koravo is on the sefer and not on the Torah. And, all right, but our homily is still nice. But when we say the word becomes flesh, in our experience, that's it's something else. But what I'm more saying is that we have to actualize things first before we can. We don't have the word until the word becomes flesh. In the way that I'm trying to bring out here. Meaning, reading a book on the laws of the Sabbath, or even reading a book on the ideology and the philosophy of the Sabbath, do not capture what actually observing the Sabbath does. And I'm not just talking about the Sabbath, I'm talking about really everything in life. That's why experiential learning is so important. That's why, when you have college courses on world religions, the professor encourages the student to attend a religious service of a faith other than their own, which could be halachically problematic, I understand. I still think it's worthwhile. Television gives us a little bit of that, but not everything, because like a Catholic church, they have the incense, there's a smell, and at the Orthodox church, they might have a different smell because they use different incense. And a shul on Sukkot with the Lulav and Esrog and the Hadassim, there's also that smell that comes. And that doesn't come through the TV. Even if they had some kind of, smell-o-vision, you wouldn't really get the same smell. You wouldn't get the full experience. But the thing is, all right, so, yesterday at work, I had to bring one of our interns to go speak to somebody. They were speaking a different language, and on TV, first was John Hagee's son, and I thought it was incredible that first he's putting on a tallis, and then that caught my attention, and I saw the scripture he was preaching on was the scripture that I had studied that day, because every morning I go through Nevi'im and Ksuvim. We have the Torah, every week, the Parsha, but then the Navi and the Ksuvim, I try to every day, I try to do one chapter of Navi and one chapter of Ksuvim, and here I am starting the book of 2 Kings, and he's preaching 2 Kings, that the same chapter I was, that's a Jungian type of, synchronicity, but you got to have your eyes open to these things. Get stuck behind these trucks, and then I'm late for work again. But it's all in the Shemayim. So I got to do what I got to do. Last day of fasting for Shovavim. It hasn't been a good Shovavim, but it's been a Shovavim. And certainly been aware, even if I've been so far away from what I'm supposed to be doing here. I'm doing everything wrong, but that's also, it's part of the journey. So that's the story. You got to do things to really understand them. Anything in life, It reminds me. I told you about a few days ago. I mentioned this conservative rabbi who, on his sabbatical, was hanging out at Or Sameach. Some people were upset. They felt he was a Mesis and Mediach. Maybe he was. I don't know. And I talked to him a lot, and I even emailed him later in life. I noticed that he was in the community where he lived. a certain Hasidic Rebbe who I was close with was visiting that community, and I told him, maybe you want to go see the Rebbe, and I think he might have went. He said, he wanted a bracha for his wife. He was a mammon. And he said, we are having a baby, plural, which is beautiful. But he had to capitalize that we to get my attention. He didn't say my wife's having a baby. He said, we're having a baby. Which is true. I remember talking to another Hasidic Rebbe. I call him my Baba got a kind. Because I said my wife had a baby, and he said Flex sogar nicht gehabt kind. The MS is the Baba katin da alle Arbeit. He said the way the Indian people usually said I had a baby. Mir gehabt a kind. Man war aber nicht zusammen gehabt a kind. Mit der Beschäfer hoch. So I've already rambled on for almost a half hour. But this is the point I want to bring out. You have to experience things to really get them. Now, what's the Kabbalistic reason for that? And and this might offend some people, but it's because our actions have consequences, and there are all kinds of creatures that God created in this multiverse that we exist in, this multi-dimensional universe that we live in. And we are affected by our actions. There's energy that comes by virtue of what we do. Anger. Often there's a vicious cycle. Addictions, drug abuse. These things not only have a chemical effect, they have, and if they attract certain other beings that feed off of our energy, and you want to call them demons, you want to call them ghosts, whatever a dibuk, a jinn, shindalid, whatever you want to call these beings. They're there. They're all around us. Extraterrestrials, transdimensional beings, ultra-dimensionals, ultra-terrestrials, whatever you want to call them. There's all different kinds of spirits. And we experience them all the time. And they can invade our brain. They can affect our lives. And we can cleanse ourselves of the negative energies by certain practices and build up spiritual strength. So, it's why it's important to go to a mikveh. There's some major energy issues. Kashrut, the foods we eat, things like this, they affect us. The Sabbath, family life, marital life. There's all kinds of energies. I mean, yesterday, I was overseeing the Naaseh group, and their Goti, their chief, their priest, he was, demonstrating things that we all feel, that we generate energies with our hands, with our auras. Our auras can, we feel things. We feel energies. People don't like to sit right next to each other, at the movie theater, unless their energies are. They usually like to have like one seat in between them, because there's demons, there's energies, there's angels, there's all kinds of things going on, and we're sensitive to that stuff, And like, he put his hands out and told the other guy, hold your hand out and tell me when you feel something, before. And it wasn't when they actually touched. It was, energies are there. And I remember Kaddish Waldman in Or Sameach, he would teach. It wasn't. He also taught in Mevaseret. He didn't teach in Or Sameach. He learned at Or Sameach and he taught in Mevaseret. And the guys from Mevaseret told me that Reb Kaddish brought them to the Pittsburgher Rebbe. And they were standing there with their hands up, meditating and sending out energy toward the Rebbe. And the Rebbe, in English, told them, stop it! Because they were across the room, it was dark, and he could feel their energy that was being cast. And he didn't see them, it was in the dark, They had their hands up and they were casting their energy out. And he said, stop it. And these are things that I have been sensitive to all my life, these energies. And just between the hands and the like animal magnetism that you feel. And I didn't know what it was, and I still don't really know what it is. But I know it's there. Just a little bit to talk about, but the point is a lot of these things, that's how they're effective. And that's why it's not about the intellect, it's about the experience and the actions. That's what it's all about. And that's why you cannot understand anything you read in a book until you actually do it. There's just psychological energy there. Tell me, when you learn something, the way people learn, like you're not going to be able to read a book and learn how to fix a car, how to fly a plane, how to ride a bike. You need someone to actually show you. That's what I'm talking about. All right. Well, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. And Naaseh venishma. Why don't you try keeping this Shabbos? And then you'll realize what I'm talking about, what Shabbos is all about. Have a good Shabbos. Take care.